Yeah, good morning, afternoon, whenever you hear this presentation. I'm Achim Haug. I'm the CEO and founder of AirGradient. And today I want to give a bit of background what we do. And I think we have quite an interesting approach to air quality monitoring, which is based on open source principles. So I want to really dive into this and what I feel are the benefits of this approach. So let's start. So I'm originally from Germany, but I in Thailand since 20 years. I worked with Siemens previously, and then I went on a sabbatical to Northern Thailand. And my kids went to a school here, and they have a so-called fifth season, which they call burning season. And this is a picture I took in 2019 from the terrace of my house. And 2019 was probably one of the worst burning seasons in the last decade here. So we had over weeks, we had air pollutions in the hazardous level. The school, even so they had air purifiers in each classrooms, they had to actually close. They couldn't manage the situation anymore. And I think one of the worst things was when we flew a couple of times out because it was just unbearable. And once we flew out and 1 hour later, they closed the airport because of zero visibility. So this is really something that kind of opened the AirGradient, because I was volunteering at my kids' school, and when I saw how they actually struggled with this situation, the head of school was running around with a PM meter trying to make sense of the classrooms and how much it took away from actually the teaching and the learning. I and my co-founder, we said, okay, let's just build some air quality monitors, put them into classrooms, give the head of school a small dashboard that he knows, all these 100 classrooms, what's the air quality situation. And we actually started this really as a community project. So we started with students here. On the left, you see like one of the first monitors we put into a recycled plastic bottle as an enclosure, but we also built actually purification equipment, what you see on the right-hand side. And then we also did community activities, so invited like a couple of local high schools, actually from the most affected areas in the region here, onto the campus. We had firefighters coming in, medical experts, also advocacy coaches to really tell the kids, like, no matter how old you are, you have a right for clean air. And then COVID hit. It was just one of the last events in 2020 that we could do it in person. But that actually gave us a lot of time to really develop our products. And we got more and more feedback and demand. And then we decided, yeah, we can actually build a company around this. And all of the monitors that we have are basically still following today that kind of philosophy that we build with the community, that it's open source, it's open hardware. And I want to just dive into 2026 now. So we have, so in 2020, we founded AirGradient. Now we have around 30 people in the company. We cover communications, science. We have a strong engineering team. We pretty much do everything in-house, so we don't subcontract the engineering, firmware, the software platform, the hardware engineering, and obviously all the production manufacturing is something we do ourselves. We don't have a sales team, and that's quite unique as well. I often jokingly say, like, I'm probably the only sales guy in the company. Why this works, we're gonna, I think, find out throughout that presentation. So our ecosystem is, we have the hardware monitors, we have various data platforms now, a kind of dashboard that covers a lot of the indoor monitors. For example, we also have a map application. We have now mobile apps for Android, for iOS. You can just search for AirGradient in the app stores. What we also do is we have 3 or 4 scientists, in-house scientists working at AirGradient, which do a lot of different things. One is looking after our big scientific network. We also do a lot of co-locations all around the world where we constantly compare the measurements of our low-cost monitors with reference-grade instruments. They do also webinars. They also support really communities on the ground if they have questions about how to analyze data and so on. And we have a big focus on awareness philanthropy. We are based here in the global south, so air pollution is often on another level than in the West. And we are really trying to give back and support a lot of NGOs on the ground with with either financial contributions or air quality monitors. So that's how they look. So indoor in the middle, we have the more professional outdoor one that also measures NO2, O3, besides PM, CO2. I would say the usual suspects. And then we also have, actually, which is not on the slide yet, we are just launching a portable monitor as well, which actually the whole team and a lot of the partners that we're already talking to are very excited about. So what really combines all of our monitors is that they are open source hardware. They're actually even certified by the Open Source Hardware Association. And what this means is you can go on our website and you can download everything to build this monitor yourself. You can download the electronic schematics, the KiCad, the firmware, the enclosure files, and it's licensed under CC BY-SA. That means you can build it yourself, you can sell it, you don't have to give us any money. So this is obviously often one of our partners, or I would say even friends, once said AirGradient runs this irrational business model. And I want to dive in a little bit. And often the next question is like, okay, if you share everything, then how do you actually make money? And we do it by selling exactly the same open source hardware design that you can download on the website. We have very competitive prices because we have very optimized processes. And with high volumes, we can also get good purchase prices. So we can basically offer the monitors at a very affordable price and still make a profit. And there are a couple of advantages we will see later in the presentation. One thing that also I think differentiates, let's say if you buy a monitor from us versus building it yourself potentially, is that all our assembled monitors, they go for very comprehensive testing and they all have a test report, and we have our own reference grade PM and NO2 instruments. On the right-hand side, you see Pallas Vidas. It's the same like a Teledyne T640 that's US EPA approved. And every monitor, you can basically go into the dashboard, you can see a test report like this, and you can actually see the gray line is, for example, for PM, the typical out-of-the-box performance. And then we have the reference in green, and you see the blue line, which is actually the calibrated value. So we can actually fine-tune the monitors to a very, very high level, which is also then an advantage to get it from us. What's often people think when they hear about like open source, oh, like this is for nerds, or this is something I have to, it's complicated, or I have to do something. It's actually not. And we also really made a big point to get this monitor certified, and not only for the mandatory certification like REACH or ROSE and so on, but also for these building certifications. So we are reset and we are also USGBC member with this monitor. So this puts it on exactly the same level like you buy any other more proprietary product. So now, in the second part of this presentation, I really want to dive into what are the open source advantages that we see, and Some of them, interestingly, some of these advantages were planned from the beginning, but some also came out and we were a little bit surprised. Okay, and both I think are really interesting concepts. So I think the first one, um, I call it accelerates innovation. I think with an open approach, um, you can really innovate faster and innovate better. And this is a list of contributions we actually got from the community. So because our firmware, our hardware is open, people can very, very easily actually create integrations with other systems. And this also applies. So a lot of this are like smart home integrations, but a lot of this can also happen in terms of building management systems, for example. So you might have maybe it could be even an old BMS, and it might not have the latest interfaces where maybe most monitors work with. So you can actually then take the firmware from which is on the public GitHub from our monitors. Make an interface to that BMS, let it talk to each other, and with one click, flash that new firmware onto the monitors, and then you have a very powerful integration. One example I want to give was really, really interesting, and I still remember it. So there's a smart home system called Homey. It's similar to Home Assistant, and so we got a couple of people from the Homey community coming to us and say, hey, can AirGradient, talk directly with the smart home system? And I talked to my co-founder, and we just didn't have resources available. So I thought, okay, why not? I reach out to the Homey community, and funnily, also my co-founder said, like I'm on holidays the next 2 weeks, I can't do anything. So a day after he left, I reached out to the community at Homey. The next day, I had 4 developers that volunteered their time and said, "Hey, like we are really interested to help you." I talked to them. I selected 2. I sent them free hardware with DHL Express. One was I think, in the Netherlands. One was in Australia. Gave them, like kind of write access to the repository. They started development. And before my co-founder came back after the 2 weeks, this integration was live on the Homey smart home system, and everybody could use it. And like we didn't have to pay for it. I mean, the community really wanted to have this, and this really shows this win-win. We share our code where we invested probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, but then we also get back, and we can integrate and this integration into the software. So that's where I feel, okay, we can innovate very, very fast now. AirGradient is much more than the 30 people working at it now, basically, because we have such a strong community behind. But the partnerships also go beyond, let's say, the technology side or the software development side. So especially on the research side, we have a lot of powerful partnerships. Because researchers are also often struggling with so-called black boxes, where they don't really understand what is the firmware doing. Is it maybe averaging data? Is it doing some kind of calibrations which are not publicly known? So they are very, very interested with working with us. And at the same time, obviously, they can share their resources, which are often very, very powerful. Some of them, like, for example, the University of Birmingham in the UK, they have a so-called super site where they have extremely expensive reference instruments going into the millions of US dollars. And, by having this cooperation, we can really benefit both sides. Also, partnerships with UN organizations where they explicitly actually chose us because of the open source aspect. One interesting project we did last year in Laos and with UNICEF, and they actually just chose us because we are open source, and they deployed 160 monitors all across the country. There was only one reference station actually publicly available before, which was the US Embassy, the small green dot here. And basically within two months together, we deployed 160 monitors all across the country that deliver open data. It's on OpenEQ, it's public data. And UNICEF needs that data because they want to train a localized AI model, and they need more ground truth stations because often the, let's say, satellite-derived data needs to be verified with ground stations. So, and their model is also open source, and so it was a very natural fit with the open source monitors and their open source approach to machine learning and modeling. Then number 3, I think I mentioned the community already a couple of times. And I also mentioned, I think early on, that we don't have a sales team. And I often say also our community is actually our best sales team because they can just see the benefits. How quick did we build up that home integration? How much they benefit from it. They just talking about us, they recommending us. I think word of mouth is probably the best marketing you can have. If a friend tells you, hey, like get an AirGradient, it's great, I have it in my home. It's much, much better than having an ad on Google or anywhere else. So we have a very popular forum, a discussion forum where actually 5 or 6 people from our staff are continuously, answering questions. Also, if technical problems pop up, we discuss them there, new product ideas and so on. So we have quite a lot of hits. We also rank very well with Google. I think one really positive aspect of the open source approach is by definition we don't really have secrets. We can talk about everything, we can publish everything, and that makes quite interesting articles actually that we can push out. We also run a lot of like forums, online forums mostly, but we also go speak at conferences and really building this visibility, this community that we can much better reach with the open source aspect. Increases accessibility, maximize impact. I think that's a really important aspect here, especially I think in, let's say, with lower income communities or lower income countries. I think we have both also in rich countries, there are people that don't have as much money. So by, for example, not having to pay a big marketing and sales team, we can actually have the product at a lower cost and offered in the market. So this is just a comparison of like the outdoor monitor where they are price wise. So we actually have one of the lowest costs. We also don't charge subscriptions if the data is openly shared. So if not, it's a very low $2 per month per monitor subscription. Obviously also with the open source hardware aspect, it's super easy to repair the device. So you can, let's say if the PM module fails, you can buy it from anywhere. There are 4 screws, you can open the device, you plug it out, plug the new one in, close it, and you can run it again. So there are no proprietary cartridges or anything like this. So our aim is to really, and we design the product for a long lifetime. It's often the opposite where companies look, oh, we have 1 year warranty. If it breaks after year 2, it doesn't really matter. No, we really looked at each component and said, we want to try and get this running for more than 10 years. There obviously, for example, the PM sensor has a certain limit in the lifetime, but that's why we said, let's make it easy to replace that. Capacity building, we can also call it training. So we run a lot of workshops. Also, the UNDP toolkit is really about teaching others how they can run an air quality monitoring network. It could be in a city, it could be in a whole country. Here is a workshop where they actually build the monitor. So we also try to teach them, hey, this is how an air quality monitor works. These are the different kinds of sensors. These are maybe what you need to take care of, that they work well, that they measure accurately. So we run that quite often with all kinds of people. The youngest I had was a kindergarten class with 5 years old, and let's say the oldest one or most advanced one was a group of PhD students. So you can actually really do this for all kinds of ages. I think this is a really interesting one, and I think that's also one thing which I mentioned earlier, which wasn't that clear, I think, at the beginning. But I think by being open and sharing everything, we always need to be faster than the competition. We cannot just say, "Hey, great, we locked people into this platform; they cannot easily escape. We can take a year break before like developing a new product." No, because people could use our existing design, be better than us, and kind of driving us or bringing something more interesting into the market. So I mentioned it here as like we always need to be better than the cloners. And this also means our cost position and our innovation. So we need to make sure we have streamlined processes. Our manufacturing works flawlessly. We have the right partnerships to drive innovations. And in the end, what happens is we improve the products. We will have good products here. So coming to the end, just a little bit of a wrap up, and then I'm happy to jump into questions and discussion. Um, I think we were to some extent lucky as well that it worked. I think a lot has to do with the beginning, what I shared when we had these massive burning season in 2019, and also just starting with this intention. Okay, let's do something that really helps, that really addresses the problem. So we didn't start with a business plan to say, hey, like, how can we earn a lot of money doing this or that? No, we had this massive problem how to keep the school safe where my children go. And that was obviously a massive incentive. And and I think having this as in our DNA really determined a lot of decisions we took later on. Like for example, we said, okay, let's open source the whole thing, also in a way that other people can actually sell it potentially. So it was just trying to, and I have the summary here a little bit, trying to really focus on how can we maximize the impact, not maximize the profit. But interestingly, by maximizing the impact, we also build a very successful business. So it's not that it's like a contradiction or anything. Yeah, so being 100% authentic, like really focusing on impact. I think what also helped, we don't have any venture capital. We are self-funded. We can call 100% our own shots. Often venture capitals have a strong focus on like subscription, recurring revenue, these kind of things, which we don't focus on, for example. So I could imagine if you have VC, it could be a lot more tricky. Yeah, and then really this focus on like how can we be super efficient in what we do. Yeah, that was my small presentation here. Here's my contact details as well. So feel free to email me, visit our website at airgradient.com. By the way, this nice picture is the community we supported in Ecuador. Mamas and papas for clean air. My Spanish is not very good. And they're just a lovely group, and they sent us this picture when they got the donation. And so, yeah, I love to share that. Yeah, that's all from my side.
That's great, Achim. This was awesome. I've been taking copious notes as you've been presenting. You could just go ahead and leave this slide up so people can definitely reach out and contact you. As we're going through the Q&A. So you have a few minutes for some Q&A?
Yeah, sure. I love to.
Okay, great. So first and foremost, I have my AirGradient monitor that you were nice enough to send through DHL, and it's performing very well. I've got a few other monitors here, so I'm kind of comparing it with some of the other monitors, and it's doing very well. It's monitoring my temperature, my carbon dioxide, my PM2.5 levels are a little elevated because I just was burning my dinner downstairs in the kitchen. It's measuring humidity, which is a little low. It's around 26%. 30% is better. It's measuring my VOCs and my NOx, right? So this is awesome. All right. So I guess the first question that I have is, um, with all the impact work that you're doing, we call it social impact here in the States. It sounds like you operate more as a nonprofit or a B Corp of sense. of sorts. What made you decide not to go the nonprofit route as opposed to staying a for-profit company?
Yeah, good question. So we often, yeah, often when I actually present AirGradient, people get confused. Is this a company? Is it an NGO? And yeah, really correct to like we see ourselves as a social impact business.
Yeah.
So I think it came from when we decided to incorporate in Thailand, there's not really a very good NGO legal structure or
Hmm.
something like this. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um, it's very difficult to actually set up a nonprofit. And we also said we are not against making a profit. You know, we also didn't want to, because if you make a nonprofit, you might become dependent on external funding, which
Yeah.
we also didn't want to do,
Yeah.
because we see at the moment, a lot of the actually funding gets cut all around the world, and a lot of these NGOs are actually in big troubles, and they have to cut stuff. So
That's
we
right.
want to actually find a way that we can self-fund our mission.
Hmm.
Now, having said this, we're actually in the process to set up a foundation in Switzerland. Right now, we have the lawyers engaged,
Okay.
where we want to more clearly separate the two. So, like, we're gonna move basically that nonprofit activities that we run under AirGradient into this new foundation.
Hmm.
And obviously, we're gonna then support this foundation from the AirGradient side, but also we want then actually to try and tap into as well actually external grants,
Right. Hmm.
because we see that foundation could actually have a big benefit because we could do a lot of like in-kind donations with air
Hmm.
quality monitors, which we can obviously provide at the really, at our cost basically.
Hmm.
And this could maximize the impact. And then if we get other funders interested, we could actually accelerate our work that we do on the ground.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in hearing your talk in the beginning, you explained kind of why you started the company and just started creating air quality monitors was because of the wildfire season. It sounds to me as though you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you really designed your monitors for the residential market first, and then transitioned into a commercial marketplace, which is very unique because most of the monitor companies that I engage with, at least the reset accredited monitors, are focused on the commercial side of the industry, the commercial asset class, and then they decided to go on the residential consumer side. Am I correct in saying that?
Maybe half, half
Okay,
correct.
okay.
Um, I mean, we started basically our initial idea. I mean, if we started with the school where my kids go, and so our initial kind of business idea was, okay, let's look at schools because we really understand well, especially here in Asia and high polluted areas, like how do schools operate, how do they keep the children safe, what kind of policies they need,
Mhm.
how can the technologies support like interventions that teachers get alerts when the air quality is worsening and so on. So that was our initial idea. Let's focus on schools basically. Um, and then interestingly, COVID hit, so obviously a lot of schools closed, but because we had open sourced the at that call we called it DIY monitor DIY kit, no? The kind of consumers got more interested, the smart home crowd, the early adopters that, we call it tech crowd. So, and that was also maybe another advantage from the open source. It's just, sometimes something picks up which you don't expect or which you didn't plan. So if you make a very, very open system, things might just happen. And this is often a very, very good driver because then you see, okay, there's a real need which you might have kind of coincidentally addressed. And then we ventured basically into, I would say, both spaces. So we if you go on our website now, we have a consumer section, and then we have also we call it professional section, which goes more into like building consultants or large scale installations, outdoors or indoors. So yeah, so we started with a school, basically. That's the answer.
So were the students look to be, very very much engaged with setting up the monitors. We here in Maryland we have what we call our indoor air core, which is our student. you know, indoor air quality mentorship program where we, bring on interns and deploy the students. These are generally, juniors in high school, seniors in high school. And we deploy them with kind of mobile monitors they can drop in their backpacks. And so what they need to do is, when they wake up in the morning, they have a dashboard. They need to mark their temperature and their particulates and the humidity. And then they also do the same thing while they're in school, because it all has a mobile app, and then they also measure at home, preferably when it's cooking. And they do this probably like 6 to 8 months throughout the year. It's a full year-long program. Um, and our students are very much engaged with that, just learning about what's happening with their air quality, also doing research on, radon and particulate matter and things like that. Do you, my two questions are, do you have a mobile version um, that can be tied to a mobile app is the first question. The second question is talk a little bit about how engaged the students are
Mhm.
with this program.
Yeah, so maybe start with the mobile one. We're actually going to launch next month our portable monitor,
Oh,
which
so we're making product announcements for the first time.
kind of. I mean, the
This is
community already
great.
knows a couple
Oh,
of blog
okay, okay,
posts
okay.
on it. I mean, we also like we are very open in the design phase, so we kind of co-design it with the community. So it will be portable. It will be something you can clip on your backpack. It's gonna have a small e-ink display, but it's still weatherproof, which is something we heard from the communities. A lot of the current portable monitors, they don't have a display, so you always need to have your phone next to you
Right,
to
right,
actually see the
right.
data. So we want to have this device more autonomous. It also have like onboard GPS memory, so you could just run it without any smartphone, and then when you are back home, it can synchronize the data. So yeah, like there's more information if you look on our blog
So real
on
briefly, what sensors will be in there?
yeah, so
Particulate,
so at the
VOC.
moment we're actually doing something really fun. We have on the roof of our building, we built an RC car, a remote controlled car racetrack, and we mounted actually four different PM sensors on the roof of this. I should have added a picture here, of this remote control car, and then we built some tunnels where we actually put in smoke, and another tunnel where we have extremely clean air with a positive pressure system. No, because we want to really test, and it's really interesting, Aaron. These four different sensors, one of them behaves completely different.
Mm,
Okay, because it's kind of mo doing a moving average, so it doesn't, it's kind of slowly going up and slowly going up,
right, right, right.
down, and the other three, you can really see the spikes,
Hmm.
but also the spikes are looking actually very different. So we take this really serious, like because there's not much out there on studies like how do these mobile sensors behave,
Yeah.
when they're in an airflow, for example,
Hmm.
what direction should it be, and so on. So PM will be in there, CO2 as well, and we are looking really into NDIR CO2 sensors because, like, especially if you have this transient between indoor and outdoors, you need very fast CO2 sensors, and some of the newer ones from Sensirion, they are more like focused on like the indoor environment, a very limited range of temperature, um, and so on. So we are testing that as well. Then
That
we
sounds
probably
very exciting.
yeah, we're gonna have temperature humidity also with something that's a little bit sticking out. That's also actually temperature is one of the most difficult things to measure, and
Mm,
often people think it's not because your enclosure heats up, you have sunshine, you have shadow,
hmm.
all of that things impact, and especially on a mobile one. And then we also measure VOCs and um, pressure, atmospheric pressure.
Okay. Okay. Got it. And I think the second part of that question was just, student engagement.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
No, yeah, and that's actually interesting. So all the monitors, also the one that you got from us, they are also available as a kit. Okay, and actually it's
Okay.
a very affordable price. It starts at around $120, which is actually exactly the same unit. It's not coming with warranty because you could break something when you build
Hmm.
it, and it doesn't have this test report and these individual factors. But this is something that a lot of schools actually use for student engagement, and you can use very different perspectives. You can have it in a computer science class, and then, hey, how do we program this thing? How can we change the open source firmware? How can we add maybe another sensor to this? But it could also come maybe from a science class, how do we analyze data? How do we calibrate this monitor? How do we compare to a reference station? What are R squares, RMSEs, you could also go into a more a community aspect, like or equality, like why is the air quality in often in low income areas much worse than in higher income areas,
Right.
like go out, measure,
Right.
and so on.
Mhm.
So it's a great tool, yeah, to engage students.
Is it possible? I don't know if radon's a thing in Thailand. It definitely is here in Maryland.
Yeah.
1 in 4 homes here in Maryland have radon levels above the EPA action limit of 4 picocuries per liter. And I actually come to the space of discovering radon in my home. I read Dr. Joseph Allen's Healthy Buildings book. I'm sure you've read it as well. And it said to get a monitor radon in your home. We did, and lo and behold, we had high levels of radon. We since got it mitigated, but is it possible to install a radon sensor in your monitor or no?
We are looking into it. So it's a bit tricky because they are not really ready usable radon modules in the market. So companies like Airthings, for example, they develop their own module.
Mm.
And the ones that are in the market are actually they cost more than our whole monitor. And obviously, if we need to put something in that
Right,
is in the price range. But
right.
we are actually looking into over the medium term, maybe we could actually create our own module, which would then also be open source, open
Mhm.
hardware. And so it's something that, yes, we see the need, but it's not as simple as just getting something and plugging it in
Plugging it
because
in, yeah. Mhm.
it's difficult to get these modules.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear more about the mobile monitor. That sounds very exciting, and I'm also excited to hear the progress with the radon sensor once you can find a viable option for that. My next question, in our market, so Maryland has the most aggressive climate law in the country. All of our buildings, 35,000 square feet, need to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 60% in the next 4 years. And they need to be net zero by 2040. And I'm sorry, I'm not bumping into many building owners nor corporate tenants that even know that this law exists. So it's a very aggressive law. And I often find myself in rooms of engineers focused on energy savings and greenhouse gas reduction and climate change and resiliency, which is all very, very important. But in these rules and standards that they're implementing, the words health and wellness of building occupant is non-existent. And so I find myself, needing to kind of beat the drum about, when we monitor air quality, and I'm sure you've probably seen the same in your area, we're monitoring air quality in buildings that are net zero, and the air quality is not good. We're monitoring air quality in buildings that have all the environmental certifications, and sometimes it's really not good. But if you focus on the health and wellness of building occupant, what you get is energy savings comes along for the ride. And it's really a challenge sometimes getting the engineers to really be open to a public health layer
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
resiliency. Are you facing similar challenges in your side of the of globe, and how do you address it?
It's a really good question, Aaron, and it's something we are struggling with because the like I mean you can probably see a little bit our philosophy that we have with like the openness, also non-platform lock-in and so on, is quite different from major players in the built environment space, for example. And if you also look at how you can earn points in certain of these certifications, you put a bicycle rack and that offsets maybe some of your bad air quality inside. It's not ideal, especially if you come from a health perspective. So we um, we are now taking more the scientific route to the build environment. So obviously we did these certifications because we want to show the market, hey, look, our product is as good as anything else. So there's no disadvantage in choosing AirGradient, for example. But we have this very, very strong scientific network, and they often come more from the health perspective.
Mm,
So we are looking at there are also standards like GoAQS, for example, that tries to take maybe a little bit of a different route to indoor air quality. That we are talking with and looking is that something that closer to, let's say, our philosophy of the space. But there's obviously a trade-off between energy savings and ventilation rates,
mm,
obviously. No?
mm,
And I believe the best way to address it is through transparency. Like try to really say, okay, this is or maybe think in scenarios, okay, you want the best indoor air quality. This is what you lose on the energy efficiency
mm,
side. You want the highest energy efficiency. This is the impact on the indoor air quality. And then you need to most likely find some kind of compromise. I mean, there are technologies like heat
demand control,
exchange, exactly, demand
demand
control,
control. Exactly. Yeah. Mm,
exactly, heat exchangers, but they have their limits too,
mm,
obviously. But I also think actually there are a lot of low-hanging fruits as well. Like I had this really funny, I wouldn't call it funny, it was actually terrible. So I don't want to go into too much details, but there's this school in the Middle East,
mm,
okay, that we monitor. And Middle East can go very, very hot in the summer. And I
mm,
noticed that the temperature 24 hours was 22 degrees in the classrooms. So I talk next time. I tell, hey, like, what's happening there? You don't switch off the AC? And the answer I got was, well, our energy costs are paid by the government.
mm,
And that was actually pretty shocking. So they didn't really care, on this aspects. But on the other hand, it really shows, yes, there are low-hanging fruits. They could save a massive amount of
mm.
energy if they actually, yeah, do demand controlled ventilation, optimize their systems.
Well, hey, you were chosen. We reached out to you specifically because you are a reset accredited monitor. Can you talk a little bit about that process, what it takes to become a reset accredited monitor, and why you decided to go that route?
Yeah, so that was actually early on. I think we did in 2021 or something. So we chose to do it because at that time, we were just starting. We felt okay. We want to really get a third party opinion on the monitor. We also feel it's obviously helpful in getting that certification. So I'm not sure exactly how the process works now, but I think we send them free monitors, and then it took a couple of weeks. They kind of tested it against their reference devices, and then I think they had one thing that we discussed, and then we did the firmware change. I think it was something about VOCs, which is often the most tricky thing
Mm,
to measure. And then we passed the criterias, and then we got the test report basically from them. And yeah, and overall, I think it's a good process, and we still get quite a lot of customers coming to us because they take that as a trust
Yeah.
factor,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
to reset that
And
application.
with lead version 5, if you want the air quality points, you need to get a reset accredited monitor. And so reset's not so well known here in the United States. I'm Maryland's first and only reset accredited professional, but I decided to go that route because of the third party validation on the hardware and the third party validation on the software as well. So very excited to hear that. My last question, um, when you're engaging with a new corporate entity, and the question comes up about return on investment, payback period. How do you address that? What metrics are you using? Is it for a school? Is it, where more students are attending class because they're not homesick? Or more parents are actually, missing less work days because they're homesick because of air quality. How do you make that argument about return on investment and payback period when it comes to our indoor air quality deployment?
Yeah, I think a good example is actually the schools. That's also, I think, a market we know really well. So if the school is in an environment with periodic or permanent, elevated air pollutions, often they invest in, pretty good purification
Hmm.
systems because
Hmm.
obviously they need to safeguard the children. It's one of their priorities. So, but often they actually do a bad job in actually communicating what they have in place. So we actually monitoring schools that can maintain 0 PM no matter what's going on outside.
Wow.
Seriously, you can have
Wow.
300 micrograms outside and you're still at zero because they use this
Wow.
positive pressure kind of
Hmm.
like what you have in clean rooms in chip making companies.
Wow.
Um, so we developed basically like an Excel sheet where we basically tell them, look, and oh, maybe one more thing. So we worked with one school during one of these pollution episodes to help them doing their advertisement.
Mhm.
Okay, and basically they advertised zero AQI classrooms when all the parents got crazy and concerned about their children's well-being. And they were flooded with inquiries after this thing. They told me it was by far the most effective advertisements they could do. And then, if you think about um, a pupil, I mean, these were more private schools, so the business case for public schools might be different. But
Yes.
if they just got one more child through that communication and they stay 12 years in a school, it pays the whole system by just by one child, all the monitors and so on. They make a huge profit. So this was something that was, I think, very, very eye-opening, and also having then these examples how the schools actually communicated that yeah, air quality that they can guarantee. So that school also actually could guarantee WHO compliance no
Mhm.
matter what's going on outside. So these are very, very powerful messages, and then combine them with that return on investment calculation.
I mean,
It
it's
can be
it's
really
immediate.
convincing.
It's almost
Yeah,
immediate, as opposed to
exactly.
energy, which is typically 1% of what any building's going to spend on. It's interesting here in the States. I know Boston, at one point had the largest deployment of 4,700, 4,500 indoor air quality monitors. But in the early days, the facilities team was just like, we're feel like we're going to set ourselves up for a potential legal litigation if we do this air quality monitoring and it's bad, as opposed to, well, if it's bad and somebody gets sick, then you're even, worse off. So, um, interesting things to work through, but I mean, it is possible for building, I mean, 0 p.m. in a school. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, hey, Achim, this has been awesome. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want people to know as we close out?
Um, I think I could talk for hours, obviously.
Yeah, we could. Yeah,
I'm
for
very
sure.
passionate about the whole thing. I have the same system actually in my house. I have 0 PM. Um, and no, like, I mean, my email is here. I would love to hear anybody who has questions. Just drop me a line and yeah, then we can continue the discussion or I can answer any questions you have.
Yeah, and I can vouch for Akin's accessibility. He and I have never met in person. We just connected via LinkedIn. We're 12 hours apart. He's in Thailand. I'm here in Baltimore, and he's been very easy to reach and very easy to communicate with. So I definitely encourage you to reach out and engage and join the community as I will be doing myself. So I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for your time, your subject matter expertise, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for having me.
My pleasure. Have a great day.